My son came home alone. 3 hours after the zombie outbreak began. The front door opened at 4:47 p.m. and my son walked in wearing one shoe. I remember the time because I'd been staring at the kitchen clock for 90 minutes, phone in my hand, trying to decide who to call next. His school, his mother, the police, the neighbors. Anyone who might tell me where a 9-year-old boy goes when the world starts eating itself and the buses stop running. 3 hours. That's how long the outbreak had been public knowledge when Eli pushed open our front door, stepped inside with his left foot bare and bloody against the tile, and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not fear, not relief. Something mechanical. Something that looked like recognition without warmth. "Dad," he said. Just that, one syllable. Then he stood there. I dropped my phone. It hit the counter and slid into the sink. I didn't retrieve it for 2 days. Let me go back. The morning had been normal in the way that haunts you afterward, when normal becomes the thing you'd trade anything to return to. Eli ate cereal standing up because he's 9, and sitting is apparently optional. He told me about a kid named Rowan, who could burp the entire alphabet, which he found aspirational. I drove him to Westlake Elementary at 7:35. He forgot his lunch on the passenger seat. I drove it back at 8:10 and left it with the front office secretary, Mrs. Callahan, who smiled at me like I was a slightly disorganized but fundamentally adequate father. By noon, adequacy was no longer the metric. The first reports came through my work laptop at 11:40. I'm an insurance actuary. I calculate risk for a living. I build models of catastrophe. I price the probability of the worst thing happening, and I have done this for 14 years. When the first video appeared in our team Slack channel, a man in a hospital gown biting through another man's forearm in a parking lot in Dayton. I assessed it the way I assess everything: likelihood of authenticity, jurisdictional proximity, personal exposure index. By 12:15, my models were useless. There were 9 videos, 4 cities. The CDC had issued a statement using the word containment, which in my professional experience is the word institutions use when containment has already failed. I called the school at 12:20. No answer. I called again at 12:24. Busy signal. I called Eli's mother, Sandra, in Portland. She picked up on the first ring. "Are you watching this?" she said. "I'm trying to get Eli." "Get him, right now. Go get him." I drove to Westlake Elementary at 12:31. The parking lot was already full of parents who had made the same calculation. The school was locked. A woman I recognized from back-to-school night was pulling on the front door handle repeatedly, as though persistence might override the deadbolt. Through the glass, I could see Mrs. Callahan standing in the lobby, with both hands raised, mouthing words I couldn't hear. They weren't releasing students. District protocol. I understood the logic. I hated the logic. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching other parents arrive, argue, plead, and eventually leave or stay. At 1:02, the principal came on the intercom. I could hear it through the cracked window and announced early dismissal. Buses would run. Parents could collect from the gymnasium entrance. I went to the gymnasium entrance. The line moved slowly. Then it stopped. At 1:47, someone's phone rang in line, and the woman who answered made a sound that wasn't a scream and wasn't a word. She ran. Within minutes, half the line dissolved, parents sprinting to their cars, engines starting, the controlled system fracturing into individual panic. I stayed in line because I'm the person who stays in line, because the system said this was how you get your child. And I trusted the system because trusting systems is my entire professional identity. At 2:03, a teacher I didn't recognize came to the gymnasium door and said buses were loading. Students whose parents were not present would be bused home per standard early dismissal protocol. "My son is Eli Torrance," I said. "I'm here. I'm his father." She looked at her clipboard. She looked at me. She said, "He was marked for bus 19. "I'm here now. I'll take him." "He's already on the bus, sir. It left 4 minutes ago." I drove home at 11 miles over the speed limit, which felt reckless and insufficient simultaneously. Bus 19's route runs east on Caldwell, north on Birch, and drops Eli at the corner of Birch and Maple, 1 block from our house. The route takes 14 minutes under normal conditions. I could beat the bus home if traffic cooperated. Traffic did not cooperate. Caldwell was gridlocked past the Chevron station. I took Emerson to bypass it and found Emerson blocked by an abandoned Honda Civic with both doors open and what I told myself was red paint on the driver's seat. I took Fletcher. Fletcher was clear. I pulled into our driveway at 2:19 and walked to the corner of Birch and Maple and stood there, like a father waiting for his son. Because that's what I was. And that's what I was doing. And the world was still a place where buses delivered children to corners, where fathers stood waiting. Bus 19 didn't come. I waited until 2:40. I walked home. I called the school. No answer. I called the district transportation office. No answer. I called Sandra. "He's not here yet," I said. The silence on her end lasted 3 seconds. In my profession, I know what 3 seconds of silence costs. "How is he not there, David?" "The bus hasn't arrived. I'm sure it's traffic." "You said you were picking him up." "They put him on the bus before I could." Another silence. Longer. "I'm watching the news," Sandra said. "This is not a traffic situation." I turned on the television at 2:44. I turned it off at 2:51. What I saw in those 7 minutes taught me nothing useful about where my son was. It taught me everything about what might be between him and home. Let me tell you what I did in the next 2 hours, because I need you to understand the kind of father I was before 4:47. I called every number I had: school, district, police non-emergency, 911. Police non-emergency was disconnected. 911 rang 19 times and connected me to a recording that said all operators were assisting other callers and to remain in my home and await official instructions. I drove the bus route. All of it. Caldwell to Birch to every stop. I saw bus 19 at 3:15. It was parked diagonally across both lanes of Caldwell near the Methodist Church, engine running, doors open, empty. The driver's partition was smeared with something I could no longer pretend was paint. 3 backpacks sat in the front seats. None of them were Eli's. I searched the church parking lot, the playground behind it, the strip mall across the street. I called Eli's name until my throat closed, and a man leaning out of a second-floor apartment above the dry cleaner shouted at me to shut up and get inside. I drove home. I walked every block within a half-mile radius. I saw 2 of them during that walk, my first actual sighting. They were moving along the fence line behind the Petersons' house, both wearing medical scrubs, both moving with that hitching gait that my television had shown me, but my body had not yet learned to fear in 3 dimensions. I crossed the street. They didn't follow. I went home. I locked the doors. I sat at the kitchen counter with my phone, and I began the negotiations you make with a God you stopped believing in when you were 22. And then, at 4:47, the front door opened. He didn't knock. He still had his key, the one I'd put on a carabiner and clipped to his backpack strap. But his backpack was gone. His right shoe was gone. His left foot tracked blood across the tile, not a lot, but enough. A smear, a trail. "Dad," he said. I was off the stool and across the kitchen in what felt like a single motion. I knelt in front of him. My hands went to his shoulders, his arms, his face. I was checking him the way parents check children after a fall, searching for damage, for the source of pain, for the wound that explains the crying. But Eli wasn't crying. His face was dry. His eyes were open, focused, tracking my movements. His skin was cool under my palms. Not cold, not warm. Cool, the way skin gets after extended time outdoors in April. "Are you hurt?" I said. "Eli, are you hurt anywhere?" "I walked home," he said. "From where? Where were you?" "The bus stopped." "I know, I found the bus. Where did you go after?" He looked past me at the kitchen, at the clock, at the refrigerator. His gaze moved like he was cataloging. "I walked home," he repeated. I pulled him into my chest. He let me hold him. His arms came up and pressed against my back, not squeezing, pressing, like he was confirming my solidity. His heart was beating. I felt it against my sternum. It was beating, but it was slow. A 9-year-old boy's resting heart rate should be between 70 and 110 beats per minute. I know this because I'm the kind of father who read the pediatric development books, who tracked milestones, who kept the growth chart on the refrigerator door with a magnetic clip. I know what a 9-year-old's body is supposed to do because I made it my job to know, the way I make everything my job that through research, data, preparation. Eli's heart, pressed against my chest in that kitchen, was beating approximately 40 times per minute. I told myself it was adrenaline depletion, shock response, parasympathetic rebound after prolonged stress. I told myself these things because I'm a man who builds explanations the way other men build fences to keep the unacceptable on the other side. I pulled back. I looked at his face. His pupils were slightly dilated, but responsive. They tracked my finger when I moved it left to right. He blinked. He swallowed. He breathed steadily, shallowly, but continuously. "Let me see your foot," I said. He sat on the kitchen floor without protest. I lifted his left foot. The blood was his, a cut across the ball of the foot, maybe an inch long, shallow, consistent with stepping on glass or sharp debris. The bleeding had largely stopped. The edges of the wound were clean. Normal. This was normal. Children lose shoes and step on things and bleed and walk home. This was normal. "I'm going to clean this," I said. "It might sting." "Okay," he said. I got the first aid kit from under the bathroom sink. I cleaned the cut with saline. He didn't flinch. I applied antibiotic ointment and a butterfly bandage. He watched me work with patient attention, the way he watched me assemble furniture, observant but uninvested. "Are you hungry?" I asked. "No." "Thirsty?" He considered this. "No." "Eli, I need you to tell me what happened on the bus." He looked at the refrigerator again, that same cataloging gaze. Then back to me. "The driver stopped. People were in the road. She told us to stay in our seats. Then she got out. Then she didn't come back." "How long did you wait?" "I don't know. Some kids left. Rowan left. Then I left." "Which direction did you go?" "Home." "Eli, home is 2.5 miles from where the bus stopped." "I know." A 9-year-old walking 2.5 miles in an urban environment during an active outbreak. Alone, arriving with one minor foot laceration and no other visible injury. The probability of this, given what I'd seen on the television, given what I'd seen behind the Petersons' fence, was not zero. But in my professional framework, it was an outlier event. The kind of data point that makes you recheck your inputs. Did you see anyone while you were walking? Yes. Who? People. What kind of people? Did any of them try to? They didn't see me. I sat back on my heels. He was sitting cross-legged on the tile, hands in his lap, weight balanced. His posture was perfect. Eli has never in his life had perfect posture. He slouches at the dinner table. He melts into couches. His body is always negotiating with gravity, finding the laziest possible relationship with whatever surface supports him. He was sitting upright on a cold tile floor as though his spine were a structural element rather than a suggestion. "Buddy," I said, and my voice broke on the word. I was so scared. I didn't know where you were. "I'm here now," he said. That sentence was correct. It was appropriate. It was something a child says to reassure a parent. But the timing was off. The cadence was off. It arrived a half-second too late, as though the appropriate response had been retrieved rather than felt. I am a man who calculates risk. I build models of catastrophe. I price the probability of the worst thing happening. And in that moment, on my kitchen floor, looking at my son's steady, unblinking eyes and his perfect posture and his slow, steady heart, I began for the first time in my career to build a model I did not want to solve. I stood up. I offered my hand. He took it and rose to his feet with a fluidity that looked practiced. "Let's get you some water," I said. "Okay," he said. He drank the water. All of it. Set the glass on the counter with precise placement, centered on the tile. "Can I go to my room?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Because what else do you say? Because he's your son and he's home, and he's asking to go to his room, and you say yes, because that's what normal is. And normal is the thing you will defend with everything you have left." He walked upstairs. I listened to his footsteps, even, measured. No running, no skipped steps, no door slam. I stood in the kitchen, and I counted my own heartbeats, because I needed to confirm that mine were still fast. They were. I didn't sleep that night. I don't mean I slept poorly or woke frequently. I mean, I sat in the hallway outside Eli's bedroom door from 9 p.m. until sunrise with a flashlight and a kitchen knife and a legal pad on which I was documenting observations. This is what I know how to do. When the world becomes incomprehensible, I measure it. I build the spreadsheet. I find the variable that explains the deviation. I have done this for insurance clients whose claims seemed impossible. A house that flooded on a hill, a car that caught fire in a rainstorm. There's always an explanation. The data always resolves. At 11:15 p.m., I opened his door. The hallway light illuminated a strip across his bed. He was lying on his back, covers pulled to his chest, arms at his sides. Sleeping children don't lie like that. Sleeping children sprawl. They twist. They migrate to the edge of the mattress and hang one leg off. They bunch their pillows into shapes and press their faces into stuffed animals. Eli was lying like a diagram of a sleeping child. His breathing was visible, chest rising and falling. I counted. 8 breaths per minute. Adult sleeping respiratory rate is 12 to 20. Pediatric sleeping rate should be closer to 15 to 20. 8 was below the threshold for anything I could explain with fatigue. I closed the door. I sat back down in the hallway. I wrote on my legal pad. Respiratory rate, 8 per minute. Posture, supine, symmetrical. Movement, none observed in 4 minutes of observation. At 3:20 a.m., I heard him get up. Footsteps to the bathroom. The toilet flushed. Water ran. Footsteps back. Door closed. Normal. That was normal. Children wake in the night to use the bathroom. At 5:45, I heard him again. This time the footsteps went to his window. I heard the shade draw up. Then nothing. No footsteps returning to bed. I opened the door. He was standing at the window, looking out at the backyard, hands at his sides. "Eli?" He turned. "Hi, Dad." "What are you doing?" "Looking outside. It's early. You should sleep more." "I'm not tired." He'd slept 8 hours. His eyes showed no fatigue, no puffiness, no redness, no heaviness. He looked rested. He looked exactly as rested as a child should look after 8 hours of sleep, which should have reassured me, but instead felt like evidence of something performing rest correctly. "Come downstairs," I said. "I'll make breakfast." I made scrambled eggs. He ate them slowly, methodically, cleaning the plate. He drank orange juice. He used his fork properly. He said thank you when I set the plate down, and can I have more juice when his glass was empty. Every interaction was correct. Every response was appropriate. Every behavior fell within the range of what a 9-year-old boy does at breakfast, except the temperature. When I'd pressed my hand to his forehead casually, the way you do, checking his skin was 94 degrees. I know because after he went back upstairs, I retrieved the digital thermometer from the medicine cabinet and went to his room and said, "Open up, let me check." And he opened his mouth, and I placed the thermometer under his tongue, and it read 94.2. Normal pediatric body temperature, 97.5 to 99.5. 3 degrees below the lower bound. "Am I sick?" he asked, watching my face as I read the display. "No," I said, "just checking." I went downstairs. I sat at the counter. I opened my legal pad and I wrote, "Core temp, 94.2 degrees Fahrenheit. No shivering, no complaint of cold, no visible cyanosis. Extremities cool but not cold. Capillary refill normal." Then I wrote, "What am I measuring?" Then I wrote nothing for a long time. The television was still off. I hadn't turned it back on since 2:51 the previous afternoon. My phone was still in the sink. I retrieved it at 7 a.m. The screen was cracked but functional. 43 missed calls, 21 texts. Sandra 8 times. My sister in Denver twice. Neighbors, colleagues. An automated alert from the county emergency management office that simply read, "Shelter in place until further notice." I called Sandra. She answered immediately. "He's home," I said. "He walked home yesterday. He's okay." Oh God, David, is he hurt?" "Minor cut on his foot. He's fine. He's eating breakfast." "I'm trying to get a flight. Everything's canceled. I'm trying to rent a car. Don't drive across the country right now. He's my son. He's here. He's safe. The roads aren't safe. What's happening there? What's it like?" I looked out the kitchen window. The street was empty. The Morrisons' minivan was still in their driveway. The Chen's porch light was on, which it always is. Nothing moved. "It's quiet," I said. "David, put him on. Let me talk to him." I called Eli downstairs. He came promptly. I handed him the phone. "Hi, Mom," he said. I watched his face while he listened. He nodded at appropriate intervals. He said, "Yes, and I'm okay." And I walked home, in the same flat cadence he'd used with me. Then Sandra said something, and Eli's face did something I cannot adequately describe. It flickered, like a screen buffering. A micro-expression that wasn't any expression, just absence. a gap where reaction should have been, followed immediately by a smile that reached his eyes exactly the right amount. "I love you too," he said. He handed the phone back. I put it to my ear. "He sounds tired," Sandra said. "Yeah," I said. "He's had a day. Is he okay? He sounds flat." "He's in shock, Sandra. He walked 2 miles through this alone." You're right. Keep him safe. I'm coming." She hung up. I looked at Eli. He looked at me. That patient, cataloging attention. "Can I go to my room?" he asked. "Sure, buddy." He went upstairs. I stood in the kitchen with the cracked phone in my hand and the legal pad on the counter and the knife still sitting where I'd left it by the sink. And I felt the model building itself without my permission. Day 2. I'm going to tell you what I did on day 2 because I need you to understand that I'm not a negligent person. I'm not a person who ignores data. I'm a person who systematically eliminates alternative explanations until only one remains. And I'm telling you that on day 2, I was still eliminating. The internet was intermittent. Cellular data worked in bursts, 30 seconds of connectivity followed by minutes of nothing. In one of those bursts, I searched. Symptoms of extreme shock in children. Lowered body temperature, flattened affect, reduced appetite, altered sleep patterns, all present, all explained by psychological trauma. A 9-year-old boy who walked through the apocalypse alone could present exactly as Eli was presenting and be nothing more than profoundly traumatized. This is what I told myself. This is the model I preferred. But I'm an actuary, and an actuary does not select the preferred model. An actuary selects the model that best fits all available data points, including the ones that contradict the preferred outcome. Data point. His temperature had not risen. 94.1 on the morning of day 2. The body's thermoregulatory system does not sustain a 3-degree deficit without cause. Hypothermia presents with shivering, confusion, drowsiness. Eli presented with none of these. He was alert, responsive, coordinated. His body was simply operating at a lower set point, as though recalibrated. Data point. He had not used the bathroom since 3:20 a.m. 16 hours. A child who drank 2 glasses of orange juice and water should need to urinate within hours. He had not gone. I listened for the bathroom door. I checked the toilet. Nothing. Data point. The cut on his foot. I changed the bandage on day 2, preparing to see the normal progression of healing scab formation, slight redness at edges, tenderness. The wound looked identical to how it had appeared the previous day. Not worse, not better, static, as though healing had not begun, but infection had not set in either. A wound in suspension. Data point. I offered him lunch a peanut butter sandwich, which has been his preferred food since he was 4. He ate it, all of it. But when I collected the plate, I noticed he had eaten it in perfectly sized bites, each one the same, jaw moving the same number of times before swallowing. Rhythmic, mechanical, like someone replicating the act of eating from a stored template. Data point. He asked me no questions. A 9-year-old boy, home from school on an unexpected day, while the world collapses outside, and he asked me nothing. Not what's happening. Not when can I go back to school. Not is Rowan okay. Not when is Mom coming. He made no requests except, can I go to my room, and can I have water? He initiated no conversation. He offered no spontaneous observations. Eli was a narrating child. His internal monologue had no filter. He told you what he was thinking, what he was seeing, What he remembered from 3 weeks ago that was tangentially related to what you just said. His mind was a radio that broadcast continuously, and you could not turn it off. And I had never wanted to, because it was the most extraordinary signal I had ever received. That radio was silent. I sat outside his door on the second night, legal pad filling with observations, temperature, respiration, behaviors, absences, each entry precise, each entry damning. At midnight, I called my sister. Rachel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to not panic. David, are you okay? Is Eli? He's here. He's home. Listen, the things on TV, the people who are changing. Is it gradual? Does anyone know if it's gradual? Silence. Then, David, I'm asking a medical question. Is there a spectrum? Can someone be partially? David, what are you seeing? I'm seeing my son. I'm seeing my son come home and eat breakfast and go to his room and sleep through the night. And I'm seeing everything be almost right. And I don't know what almost means. Get out of the house. He's my son. If you're seeing what I think you're describing. He ate a peanut butter sandwich, Rachel. He said, I love you to his mother on the phone. David, are there physical signs beyond what you've told me? Low temperature, slow heart rate, slow respiration. A wound that isn't healing. He hasn't used the bathroom in 20 hours. The silence that followed lasted longer than any 3 seconds Sandra had given me. It lasted long enough for me to hear Rachel's breathing change. Hear her move the phone from one ear to the other. Hear the television in her background, distant screaming. The drone of helicopter footage. I don't know what to tell you, she said. Nobody knows the timeline. Nobody knows if there's a middle stage. So there could be a middle stage. David, I need you to be safe. He's 9. I know. He's 9 years old, Rachel. He's my son. He came home. I know. I hung up. I opened Eli's door. He was lying in the same position, supine, symmetrical, covers at chest level. Breathing, heart beating, present. I closed the door. I went downstairs. I moved the knife from the counter to the highest cabinet shelf, behind the cereal boxes. Then I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the refrigerator, and I listened to the house breathe. Day 3 began with Eli standing over me. I'd fallen asleep on the kitchen floor. I opened my eyes, and he was there, directly above me, looking down. His face was neutral. His bare feet were inches from my hip. He was already dressed the same clothes from the day before, which I hadn't thought to change, and his hair was uncombed, and he was watching me with that patient, assessing attention. You slept on the floor, he said. I did. I was tired. Can I have cereal? Yes. He stepped over me carefully, precisely, 1 foot on each side, and went to the cabinet. He poured cereal into a bowl. He opened the refrigerator and retrieved milk. He poured exactly the right amount. He got a spoon from the drawer. He sat at the table. He ate. Every motion correct. Every motion fluid. Every motion belonging to a boy who has lived in this kitchen his entire life and knows where everything is. But he had never once in 9 years made his own breakfast without being prompted. He had never poured his own cereal without spilling. He had never selected the correct amount of milk on the first attempt. These are small things. These are the things you don't notice until they change, until competence appears where incompetence used to live. And you realize that the clumsiness was the proof of authenticity all along. I watched him eat. He ate the way he'd eaten the sandwich, rhythmic, measured, identical intervals between bites. When the bowl was empty, he carried it to the sink, rinsed it, and placed it in the dishwasher. Eli has never placed a bowl in the dishwasher without being asked. Not once. Not in 9 years of meals in this kitchen. Eli, I said. I was still on the floor. I hadn't moved. Come here. He came. He stood in front of me, close, looking down. His expression was attentive. Tell me something you remember, from before. Tell me about Rowan. Rowan can burp the alphabet. What else? He has a dog named Captain. What kind of dog? Pause. Brief, but present. A brown one. Captain is a golden retriever. A golden retriever is, by any reasonable child's description, a brown one. But Eli had described Captain to me in November using the words, "He's like a living pillow made of sunshine." That's what Eli said. That's the kind of language Eli produced spontaneously, effortlessly, constantly. A brown one was correct. It was not Eli. What's your favorite thing we do together? I asked. Building Legos. Correct. Also the most statistically likely answer for any 9-year-old boy. Not wrong. Not specific. Not alive with the granular detail that Eli would have brought the particular set we were working on. The piece he lost under the couch last week. The argument we'd had about whether the instructions were suggestions or laws. I was administering a Turing test to my own child on my kitchen floor. What did you dream about last night? I asked. I didn't dream. Everybody dreams, buddy. I didn't dream. I stood up. My knees ached from the tile. I looked at him, 4'3", 62 pounds, wearing a dinosaur shirt I bought him in August and jeans with a grass stain on the right knee from a soccer game that happened in a world that no longer existed. He looked like my son. He felt like a photocopy. And here is where I need to tell you what kind of father I chose to be. Because the model was resolving. The data points were aligning. The probability curve was collapsing toward a conclusion I could not accept and could not ignore, and could not verify, without an action that was itself irreversible. What do you do? What test confirms the thing you fear without destroying the thing you love? How do you prove your child is gone without treating him as though he already is? I chose to wait. I chose to measure. I chose to sit in the uncertainty because the alternative was a certainty I could not survive being wrong about. Do you want to build Legos today? I said. Okay, he said. We went to the living room. I got the half-finished Millennium Falcon from the shelf. We sat on the carpet. I handed him pieces. He placed them correctly. He followed the instructions with precise, unhesitating accuracy. Eli always needed 2 tries. He always rotated the piece, tried it wrong, tried it right, celebrated the click. Every piece was a small victory. Every piece was an event. This Eli placed each piece correctly on the first attempt, with no celebration, no error, and no joy. I built Legos with my son on the living room floor while the world ended outside, and I counted the ways he was perfect, and I grieved each one. On day 4, the neighbors came. I'd been watching the street through the curtains, a behavior I recognize as both vigilant and paranoid, though the distinction had lost meaning. The Morrisons' house had gone dark on day 2. The Chens had loaded their car on the morning of day 3 and driven west. The Kalowskis across the street had boarded their ground floor windows with what looked like dismantled bookshelves. At 10 a.m. on day 4, Mitchell Kalowski crossed the street and knocked on my door. I opened it 6 inches with the chain engaged. "Torrance," he said. "You alone in there?" "My son is here." Mitchell nodded. He's 53, retired military, the kind of neighbor who maintains his lawn with geometric precision and owns tools for which I cannot identify purposes. We'd never been close. We'd shared waves across driveways and one awkward conversation at a block party about property tax assessments. "We're organizing," he said. "4 houses. Me, the Nguyens at 414. That couple at the end, the Burks, and now you if you want in. Shared perimeter, shared watches." "Watches against what?" He looked at me like the question was decorative. "The ones on Caldwell are moving this direction, slowly but consistently. They follow noise. We need to be quiet, organized, and aware. You in or not?" I thought about Eli upstairs, about what Mitchell might observe if he spent time in our house, about what questions might arise if other people watched my son eat cereal with mechanical precision, or sit motionless in his room for hours, or speak in that flat, correct, empty cadence. "I'm in," I said, because the alternative was isolation. And isolation meant no one between us and whatever was moving down Caldwell, and whatever was happening inside my house. We still needed protection from what was outside it. "Good. Meeting at my garage, noon. Bring whatever supplies you can share: water, batteries, food. My son stays inside during watches. He's 9. "Understood." I closed the door. I went upstairs. Eli was sitting at his desk, facing the window, hands in his lap. Not drawing, not reading, not playing. Sitting. "Eli, the neighbors are organizing a safety group. I'm going to go to meetings. You'll stay inside." "Okay. While I'm gone, stay in your room. Don't answer the door. Don't go outside." "Okay." "Eli, look at me." He turned. His eyes met mine. Clear, brown, familiar. The eyes I'd seen open for the first time in a delivery room 9 years ago. Unfocused and ancient and perfect. Those same eyes. The same color, the same shape. The same long lashes that Sandra gave him and that he would grow up to hate and then appreciate. "I love you," I said. "I love you too," he said. The same half-second delay. The same retrieved quality. I went to Mitchell's garage at noon. The Nguyens, Martin, and Diane were already there, along with Paul and Sarah Burke from the end of the cul-de-sac. Mitchell had a whiteboard, a map of our street, a rotation schedule written in precise military notation. "Here's what we know," Mitchell said. "The infection moves through bite. The turned are attracted to sound, and possibly to movement. They're slow but persistent. They don't seem to tire. Military presence has withdrawn to a perimeter around the city center. We're outside it. No one is coming for us in the short term." "How do you know all this?" Sarah asked. "Ham radio. There's a network. Survivors sharing information. The consistent reports are bite transmission, sound attraction, no higher cognition, no tool use, no speech." No speech. The words landed in my chest like a physical object. "What about?" I began, and everyone looked at me, and I restructured the sentence while they watched. "What about people who are bitten but not fully turned? Is there a middle stage?" Mitchell's expression tightened. "Define middle stage." "People who are infected but still functioning, still talking, still appearing normal." "No reports of that," Mitchell said. "Every account I've picked up describes full and rapid transition, 12 to 40 minutes from bite to turn." 12 to 40 minutes, I repeated. Variable based on bite location and severity. But fast, you'll know. I nodded. I took my watch assignment, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., the front approach from my own porch. I took the supply list. I walked home. Inside, I stood at the bottom of the stairs and I calculated. 3 hours. Eli had been missing for 3 hours between the bus and home. If he'd been bitten during that walk early in the walk, that was far beyond the 40-minute window. If the timeline was 12 to 40 minutes, and Eli had been walking for 3 hours, Then either he was not bitten or the transition had already completed before he reached me. Both possibilities existed. Neither eliminated the other. I went upstairs. He was exactly where I'd left him. Same position, same quiet hands, same patient waiting. "Dad?" he said as I stood in his doorway. "Yeah, buddy. When is this over?" It was the first question he'd asked that wasn't a request. The first time he'd initiated something other than a functional need. The first time he'd expressed uncertainty about the future. I felt it in my body, a flood of warmth, of hope, of the desperate grasping need to interpret this as evidence of the model I preferred. "I don't know," I said, "but we're safe here. We're together." "Okay," he said, and turned back to the window. The warmth receded. The data point stood alone, neither confirming nor denying. One question. That's all it was. One question from a boy who used to ask 40 per hour. The night watch rotation began, and I discovered that fear of what's outside your house is a very different animal than fear of what's inside it. From my porch between 6 and 10 a.m. each morning, I watched the street with binoculars Mitchell had provided. I saw movement on Caldwell, twice shambling figures that passed through the intersection without turning onto our street. I saw a dog running, alone, trailing a leash. I saw a military helicopter cross the eastern sky on day 5 without slowing or descending. These were external threats, quantifiable, observable. They either approached or they didn't. They operated on principles I could model: sound attraction, persistent movement, no cognition. They were problems with parameters. The problem inside my house had no parameters. Eli continued to eat meals when offered. His temperature remained between 93.8 and 94.4. His heart rate held at 38 to 42. His wound neither healed nor worsened. He slept in the same supine position every night for exactly 7 hours and was alert immediately upon waking, with no grogginess, no transition between sleep and consciousness. He spoke when spoken to. He answered questions correctly. He never initiated contact. He never asked for anything he didn't functionally need. He never complained, never argued, never expressed preference between two options. When I offered him choices what to eat, what to do, he selected the first option presented, every time, without deliberation. On day 5, I tried an experiment. "Eli, do you want to play a game or do you want to read?" "Play a game." "Actually, would you rather read or watch a movie?" "Read." First option, both times. "Would you rather eat garbage or fly to the moon?" "Eat garbage." He said it with the same flat compliance. No reaction to the absurdity. No laugh, no confusion. No, "That's weird, Dad." Just selection of the first option presented. I went to the bathroom and pressed my forehead against the mirror and breathed until the tightness in my chest released enough for me to stand upright. Here is what I knew by day 5. My son's body was present in my house. It responded to stimuli. It performed basic functions. It maintained homeostasis at settings below human normal. It accessed memories, at least surface-level factual memories, correctly. It produced appropriate speech when prompted. It consumed food and water. It slept. It did not generate spontaneous thought. It did not express emotion. It did not demonstrate preference. It did not create. It did not play. It did not laugh. It did not cry. It did not ask why. What I had in my house was a system maintaining the appearance of a child. A very good appearance. Good enough to pass at a distance. Good enough to fool a desperate father for 24 hours. Good enough to say, "I love you too," with the right words in the right order at the right time. But not good enough to know that Captain is a living pillow made of sunshine. Day 6. Mitchell knocked again. "Torrance, need to talk." I opened the door wider this time. He stood on my porch with his arms crossed, and his face had an expression I recognized from my professional life, the expression of someone about to deliver information they know will damage the recipient. "Your boy," he said. "He's been standing in his window. He likes to look outside. He's been standing in his window for 6 hours. Diane noticed. She says he hasn't moved. Kids zone out? For 6 hours?" I felt the perimeter of my private crisis pressing against the perimeter of our shared safety. 2 systems intersecting. I calculated. "He's traumatized," I said. "He walked through this alone. He's processing." Mitchell studied me. He has the eyes of a man who has been trained to identify threats not through intuition, but through pattern recognition, through observable deviation from baseline. He looked at me the way I imagine I look at actuarial tables when the numbers don't add up. "Bring him outside," Mitchell said. "What?" "Bring him outside. Let him meet the group. Let him play in the yard. Kids need normalcy." "He's fine inside." "Torrance, I'm going to say this once because I respect your privacy, but our safety is collective. If there's something wrong with your boy, we need to know." "Nothing is wrong with my son." I said it with conviction. I said it with the precise intonation of a father defending his child. I said it while knowing, with actuarial certainty, that something was wrong with my son. "Bring him outside tomorrow," Mitchell said, "or I'm coming inside." He crossed the street. I closed the door. I locked it. I leaned against it. From upstairs, the sound of nothing. No footsteps, no movement, no child noise of any kind. I had 24 hours to decide what to do with the truth I could no longer contain alone. That night, les saint I did something I'd avoided for 6 days. I sat with Eli at the kitchen table with no activity between us, no food, no Legos, no pretense of normalcy, and I talked to him. Not to get information, not to test, just to talk. "Do you remember your first day of kindergarten?" I said. "Yes." "Tell me about it." "You walked me in. I had a blue backpack. Mrs. Patterson's room." "Correct. All correct." "How did you feel?" Pause. I felt nervous. "What were you nervous about?" Pause. Longer. "Being away from you." My throat closed. Because this was true. He had cried at the classroom door. He had gripped my hand and told me his stomach hurt and asked if he could stay with me instead. And I had knelt down and told him he was brave, and that I would be right there at 3 o'clock, and that the day would fly by, and he would have so many things to tell me. "Eli, do you know what's happening outside?" "People are sick." "Yes, people are very sick. It's dangerous." "I know." "Are you scared?" Pause. "Should I be?" This response was wrong in a way I can only describe as architectural. A child who is not scared asks, "Why would I be?" or says no, reflexively. A child who is scared says yes, or changes the subject. No child asks, "Should I be?" Because that question requires self-awareness about the absence of an expected emotion. That question means, I notice I don't feel what I'm supposed to feel. What's the correct answer? "It's okay to be scared," I said carefully. "Then yes," he said. "I'm scared." He said it with the same flat delivery. No physiological accompaniment. No widened eyes, no quickened breath, no tension in his hands. He stated the emotion like reading it from a card. I put my hand on the table, palm up, open, an offering, a test. He looked at my hand. No, he looked at my face. He placed his hand in mine. His palm was dry and cool. His fingers curled around mine with appropriate pressure. His thumb rested against the base of my index finger. I held my son's hand, and I felt nothing from him. No pulse of connection, no squeeze, no warmth. Just contact. Just surface meeting surface. "Eli," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Okay?" "On the bus, when the driver got out, what happened?" "People came." "What people?" "Sick people." "Did they get on the bus?" "Yes." "Did they hurt anyone?" "Yes." "Did they hurt you?" He looked at me, directly, steadily, his hand in mine, motionless. "No," he said. "Eli, I need the truth." "No." I held his gaze. I counted seconds. I counted heartbeats, mine, racing. His, that distant, slow drum I could feel faintly through his palm. "Show me your arms," I said. He extended both arms, palms up, then turned them. No marks, no bruising, no broken skin. "Your legs." He stood and pulled up his pant legs. "Nothing." "Turn around." He turned. I lifted his shirt. His back was unmarked, pale, cool to the touch. No wounds. "Your neck." He tilted his head, both sides. "Clean." I checked everywhere a bite could hide, every joint, every fold. Behind the ears, between the fingers, the soles of his feet. Nothing. No mark except the original cut on his left foot, still suspended in its non-healing stasis. No bite, no visible point of transmission, no wound to explain what I was observing. The model fractured. If bite was the vector, and there was no bite, then either my observations were wrong, Eli was simply traumatized, and I was the one losing grip on reality, or the vector was not exclusively bite. And something else had happened to my son during those 3 hours that left no mark but changed everything underneath. Both possibilities coexisted. Neither could be eliminated. I pulled his shirt back down. He turned to face me, and for one moment, one fraction of 1 second, I saw something cross his face that did not belong to the flat, retrieving blankness I'd been documenting. It was fast, a micro-expression, a flicker. It looked like sadness. Then it was gone, and he was looking at me with that patient attention. And he said, "Can I go to my room?" "Yes," I said. "You can go to your room." He went upstairs. I sat at the table. I put my head in my hands. The legal pad was full. The data was extensive. The model refused to resolve. And tomorrow, Mitchell was coming inside. I brought Eli outside at 9 a.m. on day 7. The morning was clear and cool, the kind of April morning that in any other year would have meant bikes on the sidewalk and screen doors slamming and the sound of children at impractical velocity. The street was silent. The Morrisons' house had developed a smell I refused to investigate. The boarded windows on the Kalowski place looked like sutures. "Stay close to me," I said. "We're meeting the neighbors." "Okay." We crossed the street. Mitchell was in his open garage with Martin Nguyen and Paul Burke. They turned as we approached. I watched their faces. I watched them look at my son. "This is Eli," I said. "Hey, buddy," Martin said. He smiled. It was forced, but well-intentioned. "Hi," Eli said. Mitchell studied him. That trained assessment gaze, running calculations I couldn't intercept. "How you holding up, Eli?" Mitchell asked. "Fine." "School was pretty scary, huh?" I walked home. "That's brave. You're a tough kid." Eli said nothing. He stood beside me, hands at his sides, posture straight, not fidgeting, not looking around, not exhibiting any of the behaviors a 9-year-old produces when placed among unfamiliar adults, the shyness, the clinging, the boredom, the performance. He's quiet, Paul observed to me, as though Eli weren't there. He's been through a lot, I said. Mitchell nodded slowly. His eyes hadn't left Eli. Go play in the yard, buddy, I said, gesturing to the Kalowskis' fenced backyard. Just the backyard. Stay where I can see you. Eli walked to the backyard. He stood in the center of the grass. He did not play. He stood. The four of us watched him from the garage. Torrance, Mitchell said quietly. Don't. His color. Look at his color. I looked. In the clear morning light, away from the warm, artificial lighting of our house. Eli's skin had a quality I hadn't fully registered indoors. Pale, yes, but not the pallor of sickness. The pallor of absence. A subtracted quality, as though the blood beneath the surface had thinned or slowed or cooled beyond the point where it colored the skin. He's always been fair-skinned, I said. That's not fair-skinned, Martin said. His voice was gentle. He had 2 daughters, both older, both at college on the East Coast, both unreachable since day one. He was looking at Eli with compassion, but also with recognition. Has he been bitten? Mitchell asked directly. No, I checked. Everywhere. There's no bite. Scratched? Nothing. 1 cut on his foot from stepping on glass. When was the cut? He came home with it, day 1. Mitchell exchanged a glance with Martin, a glance that held the kind of mutual understanding I was not part of. What? I said. The ham radio network, Mitchell said. There was a report 2 days ago, out of Columbus. A woman said her husband came home with a scratch from a fence near an infected area. No direct contact with a turned individual, but the scratch had been in contact with residue, fluid, on the fence. And 3 days. He turned in 3 days. Slower than a bite, but complete. The world tilted. Not dramatically, just enough. The way it does when a model you've been building against your will receives its final variable and the equation solves, and the answer is the one you already knew. No, I said. Torrance. That's 1 report, unverified, from a ham radio. You're telling me that's sufficient evidence to what? What are you suggesting? Mitchell raised both hands. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what I've heard. And I'm telling you that your boy is standing in my backyard like a mannequin, and his skin looks like marble, and you already know something is wrong because you've been hiding him for a week. I haven't been hiding him. You have. And I don't blame you. He's your son. But this is a collective safety situation, and I need you to be honest with me and with yourself. In the yard, Eli stood motionless. The breeze moved his hair. Nothing else moved. He talks, I said. He eats, he sleeps. He remembers things. He's my son. I believe he's your son, Mitchell said. I'm asking if he's only your son. The question landed with surgical precision. Not cruelty, not accusation. Just the question that I'd been circling for 7 days, like a planet orbiting a collapsed star, never approaching, never escaping. I don't know, I said. It was the first time I'd said it out loud. Mitchell gave me 48 hours. 2 days, he said. Watch him. If he changes, if he progresses, we need to act. If he stabilizes, if this is what he is now and he's not a danger, then he stays. But I need you to tell me the moment anything shifts. What does act mean? I asked. Mitchell didn't answer. He didn't need to. I took Eli home. He walked beside me across the street, matching my pace, and when we stepped inside, he went immediately upstairs. No comment on the interaction, No, those people were weird. Or, why was that man staring at me? Or any of the processing that a child does after social exposure. I sat at the kitchen table and I confronted the question I'd been deferring since 4:47 p.m. on day one. If Eli is something other than my son, if the thing in my house is a process in progress, a transition in slow motion, an infection expressing itself gradually through a body that once held my child, then what is my obligation? To whom? To the neighbors who share a safety perimeter with us. To the principle of collective survival that requires threat identification and elimination. To the memory of who Eli was, which might demand I refuse to let him become something that would horrify the boy he used to be. Or to the thing that says my name, that holds my hand, that eats the breakfast I make, that exists in whatever reduced, altered, suspended state it exists in, which may contain, somewhere in its architecture, the residual impressions of a boy who loved his father and came home to him through an apocalypse. I called Sandra. Connection failed. Tried again. Failed again. On the fourth try, she picked up. The line was terrible static. Delay. Words arriving in fragments. David, hear me driving 3 days. Sandra, don't come. My son coming. Sandra, listen to me. Listen. Can't stop me. Eli is different. Silence. Not connection failure. Silence. What does that mean? I told her. All of it. The temperature, the heart rate, the wound, the affect, the behavior, the tests I'd run, the absence I'd documented. I told her everything I'd written on the legal pad over 7 days, transmitted in compressed sentences through a failing connection. She listened. I could hear her breathing. I could hear road noise she was driving. Across the country. Toward us. He says he loves me, she said. Yes. He says the words. Yes, when prompted. David. Her voice broke, rebuilt. Is he in there? The question, the only question. The question that would determine everything, and that I could not answer with data or observation or any tool my profession had given me. I don't know, I said. Something is. I don't know if it's him. I'm coming. Sandra. I'm coming. 3 days, maybe 2. I'm coming, and I'm going to look at my son, and I'm going to know. A mother knows. The connection severed. I set the phone down. A mother knows. The certainty of instinct over measurement. The conviction that love is a detection instrument superior to observation. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that Sandra would walk through the door and see something I couldn't see, a spark, a signal, a proof of continuity that my spreadsheet mind was too limited to register. But I'm an actuary, and I know that instinct is just pattern recognition without transparency. It's a model that doesn't show its work. And models that don't show their work are the ones most likely to produce the answer you want rather than the answer that's true. 2 days until Mitchell's deadline. 2 or 3 until Sandra's arrival. And in between, my son, or the thing that lived where my son used to, sitting in his room, looking out his window, waiting with perfect patience for something I couldn't identify. That night, I broke my own protocol. I didn't sit in the hallway. I went into his room. I sat on the edge of his bed. He was lying in his position, supine, symmetrical, hands at his sides. Eli, I whispered. His eyes opened. Immediately. No transition. Yeah. Move over. He shifted to the side. I lay down next to him, on top of the covers. The ceiling above us had glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck there when he was 5. They'd lost most of their charge, just faint green suggestions in the darkness. Do you remember when we put those up? I asked. Yes. I picked where each one went. You arranged them in a pattern. A dinosaur. Correct. He'd made a T-Rex constellation. Sandra and I had laughed about it for weeks. Eli, are you in there? He turned his head toward me. In the darkness, his eyes reflected the faint green glow. He looked at me with an expression I could not read, not because it was blank, but because it was too subtle for the dark. I'm here, he said. And then, for the first time in 7 days, he initiated contact. His hand found mine between us on the mattress, his cool fingers wrapped around my palm. He squeezed, not hard, not rhythmically, just once, just a single, deliberate compression. I held his hand in the dark, and I wept without sound, and I did not let go until morning. Day 8. Mitchell's deadline was tomorrow. I woke in Eli's bed, with my hand still loosely curled where his had been. He was already up. I could hear him downstairs. In the kitchen, the sound of cereal into a bowl. I lay there listening to my son make breakfast, and I made a decision. I was not going to let Mitchell Kalowski decide what my son was. I was not going to let a ham radio report from Columbus determine what happened in my house. I was not going to let a military man's threat assessment override 9 years of fatherhood. But I was also not going to be the father who got his neighbors killed through denial. I needed more information. I needed data from outside my own observations. I needed to understand what Eli was not to make a decision about ending it, but to make a decision about protecting it. I went downstairs. Eli was at the table, eating cereal. Same rhythm, same precision. But when I entered, he looked up, and something in his face, subtle, barely there, resembled anticipation. "Morning," I said. "Morning, Dad." 2 words he had never offered unprompted in this new version. Not morning in response to my greeting, but morning, Dad. Initiated, voluntarily, with the addition of the relational identifier. Small, almost nothing. But in the landscape of absence I'd been mapping, it was a mountain. "Eli, I need to look at your foot." He extended his leg. I removed the bandage. The cut, 8 days old now, had changed. Not healed in the conventional sense. The edges had closed, but not with the pink new skin of regeneration. They'd closed with something smoother, paler, as though the wound had been filled rather than rebuilt, as though his body had solved the problem through a mechanism other than the human one. I touched the area. No tenderness, no warmth, no inflammation, no sensation at all, based on his complete lack of response. "Does this hurt?" "No." "Can you feel me touching it?" Pause. "Yes, pressure." "But no pain?" "No." I replaced the bandage with a fresh one. I sat across from him. "Eli, I'm going to ask you to do something hard today." "Okay." "I'm going to ask you to be more like yourself, like before." He looked at me, that assessing attention. "I don't know what you mean," he said. "When the neighbors are around, when other people can see you, I need you to move around more. Fidget, ask questions, be 9. He continued looking at me. And then something happened that restructured my entire understanding of what was occurring in my house. "I don't know how," he said. Not okay, his default compliance. Not the first option presented. A confession, an admission of incapability, a statement that implied self-awareness about the gap between what he was and what he should be. "That's okay," I said, and my voice was steady only through profound effort. "That's okay, buddy. We'll figure it out." "People can tell," he said. "That man could tell. Mitchell." He looked at me the way you look at me, like something's wrong. Eli, is something wrong with me? I sat in the wreckage of every answer I could give. The truth as I understood it. The truth as he might understand it. The lie that would protect him. The lie that would protect me. You're different than before, I said. Something happened to you, and you're different now. But you're here. You're my son. You're here. He looked down at his cereal bowl, the spoon resting against the rim, his hands in his lap. I feel far away, he said. From what? Everything. Like I'm watching from behind glass. I can see everything, but I can't. He trailed off. His first incomplete thought, his first verbal struggle, his first demonstration of language failing to meet experience. Can't what? Touch it. I can't touch it from in here. I reached across the table. I took his hand. Cool, dry, present. Can you feel this? Pressure, he said. I know it should feel like more. I remember that it used to feel like more. I held his hand, and I understood, finally, completely, what I was looking at. Not a monster wearing my son's face. Not an empty shell running on residual programming. Something in between. Something that remembered being Eli Torrance and was still trying to be Eli Torrance from behind whatever wall the infection had built between his consciousness and his body. Something that was drowning in there. Slowly, by degrees. And I was the only one who could hear it knocking on the glass. Mitchell came at noon on day 9. He didn't knock. He stood on my porch and called my name, and when I opened the door, he had Martin and Paul behind him, not threatening, not armed, but present. A quorum. Time's up, Torrance. One more day. We agreed. I know what we agreed. I'm asking for one more day. His mother is coming. She's driving from Portland. She'll be here tomorrow, maybe tonight. Mitchell's expression shifted. Not anger, something worse. Pity. What changes when she gets here? She deserves to see him. And then what? Then we decide together. Decide what? You said yourself something is wrong. You've known for a week. The boy stands in his window 8 hours a day without moving. His skin color isn't right. He doesn't react normally. This isn't a traumatized kid, Torrance. I've seen traumatized kids. This is something else. He talks. He recognizes me. He remembers his life. He told me yesterday that he feels far away, that he's trapped behind glass. He's aware. He's conscious. He's scared. Mitchell took a breath. Martin put a hand on his shoulder. David, Martin said, the first time he'd used my first name. What are you asking us to accept? That an infected individual is living in our perimeter because he can still speak? He's not aggressive. He hasn't shown any violent behavior. He eats regular food. He sleeps. He's been here 9 days, and nothing has escalated. That you've observed, Mitchell said, while he's in your house, alone, unmonitored. I monitor him constantly. You sleep. I had no response to this. I had slept. Not much, not well, but I had slept. And during those hours, Eli had been unobserved. Doing what? Standing? Sitting? Nothing? Something? Let me see him, Mitchell said. Now, face to face, a conversation. That's all I'm asking. I waited. If I refused, Mitchell would act unilaterally. He'd said as much. If I allowed it, he might see what I'd seen yesterday. The flicker of self-awareness, the confession of feeling trapped, the evidence of Eli's consciousness persisting beneath the alteration. 5 minutes, I said. In the living room. He's not a specimen. They came inside. I asked them to sit. I went upstairs. Eli was at the window. He turned when I entered. In the daylight from behind him, his silhouette looked exactly like a boy. Small shoulders, uncombed hair, the slight forward lean of youth. "Eli, the neighbors are downstairs. They want to talk to you." The man who looked at me. "Yes, him and 2 others. I'll be right there. Just talk to them like you talk to me." "I don't talk much." "I know. Just answer what they ask, okay?" "Okay." We went downstairs together. He walked ahead of me, one hand trailing the banister, a gesture so familiar, so perfectly Eli, that I nearly broke right there on the stairs. In the living room, the 3 men sat on the couch. Eli stood in the center of the room, hands at his sides. I stood behind him, my hand on his shoulder, cool through the fabric. "Hey, Eli," Martin said, gentle. "Hi. Do you know what's happening outside? With the sick people?" "Yes." "Are you feeling okay?" "I'm different." Martin glanced at me. I nodded. "Different how?" Martin asked. "Everything is far away. I can see and hear, but it doesn't feel close." Mitchell leaned forward. "Eli, do you feel hungry right now?" "No." "When was the last time you felt hungry?" Pause. "I don't remember." "Do you want to hurt anyone?" Eli's eyes moved to Mitchell. His expression, for the first time in the presence of others, showed something. Not aggression, not blankness, something that looked improbably like offense. "No," he said. And the word had weight. The word had force. The word sounded, for the first time in 9 days, like a 9-year-old boy insulted by an unfair accusation. Mitchell sat back. He looked at Martin, at Paul, at me, then back at Eli. "What do you want, kid?" Eli considered this, and then he said something that no model I had built could have predicted. "I want to stay with my dad." 6 words, spontaneous, unprompted, containing desire, attachment, specificity, and fear of loss. 6 words that were more Eli than anything since Dad, in the doorway on day 1. Mitchell stood up. He crossed to the doorway of the living room. He stood there for a long moment, back to us, hands on his hips. "One more day," he said. "Mother arrives. You decide together. Then we talk." They left. I looked down at Eli. He looked up at me. "Did I do okay?" he asked. "You did perfect, buddy." Sandra arrived at 11 p.m. that night. I heard her car before I saw it. Headlights sweeping across the front window. The crunch of tires on the driveway. She'd driven 31 hours in 2 days. She looked like she'd aged a decade. I opened the front door. She was out of the car before the engine died, crossing the lawn, grabbing me. "Where is he?" "Upstairs, sleeping." "I need to see him." "Wait, Sandra, wait." I held her arms. "I told you on the phone. I need you to be prepared." "I'm prepared." "You're not. You think you are. But seeing him, it's different." "David, let go of me. Let me see my son." I let go. She went inside. I followed her up the stairs. She opened his door. Eli was lying in his position, supine, symmetrical, eyes closed. In the hallway light, his skin was what it was that subtracted pallor, the veins too visible beneath. The architecture of his face slightly sharpened, as though the tissue had thinned. Sandra stood in the doorway. She made no sound. She stood there for 30 seconds that felt like hours. Then she went to him. She knelt beside the bed. She brushed his hair back from his forehead. "Baby," she whispered. His eyes opened. No transition. "Mom." "Hi, sweetheart. I'm here." "You drove?" "I drove. A very long way. I'm here now." His hand came up from under the covers. He touched her face. his fingertips against her cheek. Sandra's breath caught. I could hear it from the doorway, the sharp inhale, the recognition of cool skin against warm. "You're cold," she said. "I know." She lay down beside him. She pulled him against her chest. She held him the way you hold a child when they're sick completely, protectively, with your whole body as a shield against whatever has come for them. I watched from the doorway. I watched her face as she registered what I had registered over 9 days, the slow heart, the cool skin, the absence of the fidgeting warmth that a living child produces against you. I watched her hold him anyway. After a while, she looked at me over his head. Her face was wet. Her jaw was set. "He's in there," she said. "I know. Whatever this is, he's in there. I can feel him. I know. So what do we do?" I sat down on the floor of his room, my back against the dresser that held his folded clothes, and I told her about Mitchell, about the deadline, about the collective perimeter, and the threat assessment, and the question of what act meant when the man who asked it had spent his career in theaters where savoir act was a euphemism for something final. Sandra listened without letting go of Eli. His eyes were open. He was listening too. "Nobody is taking him," Sandra said. "They won't take him, but they might make us leave. Then we leave. And go where? The roads aren't safe. The military perimeter is miles away. We'd be exposed. I don't care. I do. Because keeping him alive, whatever alive means for him now, requires a safe place to keep him. If we run, we lose the safety of the group. If we stay, we accept their terms." Sandra pressed her face into Eli's hair. He lay still against her, eyes on me, that patient attention. "What are their terms?" she whispered. "I don't know yet. Tomorrow we find out." We stayed in Eli's room that night, all 3 of us. Sandra on the bed with Eli, me on the floor, a family arranged around its center. The last time all 3 of us had slept in the same room was a hotel in Florida 4 years ago, before the divorce, before Portland, before the polite, careful architecture of shared custody and scheduled calls. Now here we were, reunited by the same thing that was taking our son away from us in slow motion. In the dark, Sandra's voice. "David." "Yeah. His heart is so slow." "I know." "What if he's not?" She couldn't finish. "He asked to stay with me," I said. "Yesterday, in front of the neighbors. He said, 'I want to stay with my dad.' Spontaneously, without prompting." I heard her breath shudder. "Then he's in there," she said. "Something is. Something that remembers being him. Something that wants to be near us." "That's him." "Maybe." "That's him, David." I closed my eyes. In the dark, I could hear 3 sets of breathing. 2 fast, 1 slow. A family's vital signs, mismatched but present. "Maybe," I said again. Because I could not give her certainty I did not have. Because the actuary in me would not let me round up from probably to definitely. Because the difference between those words might be the difference between keeping a child and keeping a catastrophe. "Maybe is enough," Sandra said. I didn't respond. I lay on the floor and I listened to my son breathe 8 times per minute, and I waited for morning. Morning came with a knock. Mitchell, earlier than expected. Sandra answered the door before I could reach it, and the sight of her, exhausted, fierce, a woman who'd driven across a collapsing country alone, stopped Mitchell on the porch. "I'm his mother," Sandra said. "Ma'am. Whatever you think is happening in this house, I'm telling you, my son is in that boy. I held him all night. He knows me. He's scared. He's trapped in something he didn't choose, and he's still in there." Mitchell looked past her at me, I stood in the hallway, Eli behind me on the stairs, hand on the banister. "I believe you," Mitchell said. "I believe something is in there. That's not the question." "Then what is?" "The question is what else is in there, and whether it's going to stay dormant." Sandra didn't move. Her body in the doorway was a wall. "It's been 10 days, I said from behind her. 10 days, and he hasn't shown a single aggressive behavior. No violence, no pursuit, no deterioration. If anything, he's more present now than he was on day 1. He's communicating more, initiating more. Whatever this process is, it may have stabilized." "Or it's slow," Mitchell said. "And you're in a house with a slow-motion bomb." "Then monitor him," I said. "Daily check-ins. I'll bring him outside every morning. You can observe. Any change, any shift toward aggression or deterioration, and I'll—" The sentence collapsed. "You'll what?" "I'll do what needs to be done." Sandra turned to look at me. Her expression was, I don't have the word, something between betrayal and understanding. The recognition that I was making a promise I believed was false, offering Mitchell a concession I prayed I'd never have to honor. Buying time with a currency I wasn't sure I possessed. "Daily check-ins," Mitchell repeated. "Every morning, in your yard, full observation." He thought. Martin and Paul were behind him. I could see them on the sidewalk, waiting. "I have a condition," Mitchell said. "Name it." "The thermometer. You said his temperature is low. If it drops further, if it goes below 93, you tell me immediately. That's the line." "That's the line," I agreed. "Below 93, he's out of the perimeter. Non-negotiable." Sandra's hands were fists at her sides. I could see her calculating the same thing. I was the fragility of a number, the arbitrariness of a threshold, the insanity of determining your child's fate by a decimal point on a digital display. "Agreed," I said. Mitchell nodded. He looked past us at Eli on the stairs. Eli looked back at him with steady eyes. "I'm sorry, kid," Mitchell said. "I hope I'm wrong about everything." He left. Sandra closed the door and turned to me, and her face broke apart. 93, she said. "What happens at 93? What does that number even mean?" "It means nothing. It's a line in the sand to make a military man feel like he has parameters. It's a protocol. And if he crosses it, he won't. You don't know that." I didn't. I knew his temperature had ranged between 93.8 and 94.4 for 10 days. Stable, consistent. But consistency in the past does not guarantee consistency in the future. I build models of catastrophe for a living. I know exactly how stable systems fail. "I'm going to make it okay," I said. Sandra looked at me with eyes that saw through 14 years of acquaintance and 6 of marriage and 4 of divorce, eyes that knew every way I'd been adequate and every way I'd fallen short. "You can't," she said. "You can't make this okay. You can make it survivable." She was right. She was always right about the distinction between solving a problem and enduring one. From the stairs, Eli's voice. "Mom?" We both turned. He was standing 3 steps up, one hand on the banister, the other hanging at his side. In the morning light from the window at the top of the stairs, he looked almost normal, almost warm, almost present. "Yeah, baby. I'm sorry." Sandra crossed to the stairs. She sat on the bottom step and opened her arms. He came down 1 step, 2, 3, and walked into them. She held him. He let her hold him, his face pressed against her shoulder. "You have nothing to be sorry for," she said into his hair. "I can feel it," he said. His voice was muffled against her shirt. Inside. Something else. It's quiet, but it's there. Sandra's arms tightened. Her eyes found mine over his shoulder. In them, I saw the thing I'd been circling for 10 days finally arrive on someone else's face. The simultaneous knowledge that your child is telling you they're being replaced, and there is nothing you can do except be present while it happens. "We're here," she said. "We're right here." "I know," he said. "I can still feel that." Day 12. Temperature, 93.9. Day 13, 93.7. Day 14, 93.6. I tracked it the way a man watches a stock he cannot sell with helpless precision, watching the value decrease by increments too small to act on and too consistent to ignore. Each morning, the thermometer under his tongue. Each morning, the number inching toward the line Mitchell had drawn. Sandra saw me doing it. On day 14, she took the thermometer from my hand. "Stop. I have to track it." "You're tracking him toward a death sentence." "I'm tracking him toward the truth. The truth is, he's sitting in the living room right now doing a puzzle. The truth is, he asked me last night if I remembered the time we went to the aquarium and the sea lion barked at him, and he cried. The truth is, he's more present today than he was 3 days ago." She was right about the progression. Since Sandra's arrival, Eli had changed not physically, not in the measurable ways my instruments captured, but in the behavioral ways that defied my spreadsheet. He spoke more. He initiated more. He asked questions, not many, but some. He demonstrated preference. He asked for grilled cheese over soup, chose to sit in the living room over his bedroom, said, "I don't want to," when Sandra suggested he take a bath. "I don't want to." A refusal, a child's prerogative, an assertion of will. The infection, whatever it was, seemed to have created a floor beneath which Eli's consciousness had settled, diminished, distant, operating through the glass wall he'd described, but stable. Not sinking further, not dissolving, persisting. Like a person living in a body that had been turned down to its lowest functional setting. And simultaneously, his temperature dropped, as though the body's thermal system and the mind's presence were on independent trajectories, one declining while the other recovered. I didn't know which to trust. On day 15, the daily check-in with Mitchell produced a new development. Eli was standing in the Kalowski's backyard. He'd begun to walk small circuits now, a slow pacing that looked intentional, as though he were exercising a capability rather than displaying restlessness. When Mitchell said to me, "The radio network is talking about people like him." People like what? Slow turn cases, not full conversion, stuck in the middle. There are more than you'd think. I looked at him. His tone had shifted since day 9. Less adversarial. Something almost approaching respect, or at least the absence of urgency. "What are they saying?" "Mixed. Some deteriorated eventually, went full. Some seemed to plateau, like a partial expression that doesn't complete." "How long is the observation window?" "Longest reported stable case is 31 days. Woman in Michigan. Still verbal, still oriented, still functioning within limits, but different. Different like Eli. Similar. Low temperature, reduced metabolism, flat affect with occasional lucidity, like a person running on half power. And the ones who deteriorated? Preceded by rapid temperature drop. 12 to 24 hours, the bottom falls out, they go full. How fast is the drop? Multiple degrees in one day, not the slow decline you've been seeing, more like a cliff. I absorbed this, A cliff versus a slope. A distinction between gradual drift and catastrophic failure. If Eli's decline was incremental tenths of degrees over days, maybe that indicated the plateau pattern rather than the deterioration pattern. Maybe. The word that Sandra said was enough and that I could not confirm. "I'm adjusting the line," Mitchell said. "What?" "The 93 threshold. I'm removing it." I stared at him. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching Eli pace his slow circuits in the yard. "Why?" "Because it was arbitrary. I set it to feel in control. That's not how this works." "Then what's the protocol?" "Behavioral. If he shows aggression, actual threat behavior, we respond. Temperature alone doesn't predict it, based on what the network is reporting." "Mitchell?" He looked at me. "Thank you," I said. He nodded once. "I've been wrong about things before. I'd rather be wrong about this one." He paused. "He told Martin yesterday that Martin's daughters are probably okay because college kids are resourceful." Martin cried, "You should know that." I looked at Eli. His circuits had paused. He was standing still, face tilted toward the sun, a gesture so reflexively human, so bodily pleasurable that it made the rest of his strangeness almost disappear. "He's in there," I said. Not to Mitchell, to myself. "Something is," Mitchell said. "I guess that's enough." Day 20. Sandra had been sleeping in Eli's room every night since her arrival, and I'd moved from the hallway floor to the guest bedroom across the hall. We'd established a routine morning temperature, 93.4, where it had held for 4 days without further decline. Breakfast together, daily check-in, afternoon in the living room or backyard, evening together. A family. Not the family we were. Not the family we'd expected to be, but a family structured around what remained possible rather than what had been lost. On day 20, Eli said something at dinner. We were eating soup Sandra had made it from canned supplies, nothing special, and Eli was eating at his measured pace, spoon to mouth in that rhythm I'd grown accustomed to when he stopped. Set the spoon down, looked at both of us. "I know what I am," he said. Sandra's hand found mine under the table. Gripped. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" she said. "I can feel both things. The me part and the other part. The other part is quiet. It doesn't want anything yet. But it's there." "Does it?" I couldn't form the question. "It doesn't think. It's not a person. It's like weather. Like there's weather inside me that could change. But right now, it's calm." "Are you scared of it?" Sandra asked. He considered this, genuinely considered, with the slow deliberation of someone accessing a diminished but real emotional register. "No," he said. "I'm scared of not being here anymore. Of the me part going away and the weather being all that's left." Sandra's grip on my hand was painful. My vision blurred. "We won't let that happen," I said. The absurdity of the promise, the impossibility of keeping it, the absolute sincerity of saying it anyway. "You can't stop it," he said. Not cruel, not fatalistic. Matter of fact, in a way that sounded older than 9, older than any age. "But I'm glad you're here while I'm still here." This was the moment I stopped measuring. Not because the measurements didn't matter. Not because the data was irrelevant. But because I understood, finally, that no number on a thermometer was going to tell me when my son was gone. That the threshold wasn't thermal or metabolic or physiological. That the thing I was trying to detect couldn't be detected with instruments. I would know when Eli was gone because the person who said, "I'm glad you're here," would stop being able to say it. Not because his temperature crossed a line. Not because a protocol triggered. Because the weather would change, and the calm would end, and the thing that remembered being my son would dissolve into something that didn't remember anything at all. And until that happened, if that happened, every moment was a moment. Every word was a word. Every cool hand in mine was a hand in mine. "I want to tell you something," Eli said. "Tell us," Sandra said. "On the bus, when the sick people came on, one of them grabbed my backpack. I pulled away and fell. My shoe came off. I ran. They didn't follow me. They went after Rowan." Sandra's hand in mine, crushing. "I ran, and I left him. I left everyone. I only ran." "That's what you should have done," I said. "That's exactly right. I know, but I think about him. Rowan. I think about his dog Captain waiting for him." "A living pillow made of sunshine," I said. Eli looked at me, and his face did something it hadn't done in 20 days. The corners of his mouth moved. Upward, slightly, briefly. A smile. Small and imperfect, and effortful, and absolutely real. "Yeah," he said. "That's what he was." Sandra made a sound, half laugh, half sob. She stood up and came around the table and pulled Eli against her, and this time, for the first time, his arms came up around her and squeezed. Not just pressure, a squeeze, an intention, a child holding his mother. I sat at the table with cooling soup and a legal pad I would never write on again, and I watched my family hold each other across whatever distance remained between the living and the whatever Eli was, and I understood that love is not a detection instrument, and not a model and not a measurement. It's a decision, every day, to hold the thing that holds you back, however weakly, however strangely, however imperfectly, however cold the hand. Day 31. I want to tell you where we are now because you deserve an ending, even though we don't have one. Endings are for stories that resolve. We are not a story that resolves. We are a family living inside a question that doesn't close. Eli's temperature is 93.2. It has been 93.2 for 11 days. Stable. His heart rate is 36. Stable. His respiration is 7 breaths per minute. Stable. His wound healed, if you can call it that, on day 22. Smooth. Sealed. Not scarred. Not quite skin. He eats 1 meal a day now. His metabolism has slowed to the point where more isn't necessary. He sleeps 5 hours instead of 7. He uses the bathroom once a day. His body is running on settings that are not human, but are consistent and sustainable. And as far as I can determine, not declining. His words have increased, not to pre-outbreak levels, never that. The radio that used to broadcast continuously now transmits in bursts, but the bursts are longer, more complex, more recognizably Eli. Last Tuesday, he told Sandra a joke. It wasn't a good joke. Something about a chicken crossing a road that he got wrong, that he mangled the punchline of, that made no structural sense as comedy. It was the most beautiful thing either of us had heard in a month, because he tried to be funny. He attempted humor. The impulse to make his mother laugh survived whatever else had been taken. Mitchell's perimeter holds. Our street has been secure for 3 weeks. The military pushed the outer boundary back on day 26. We could hear the operations to the south, the coordinated sound of a civilization reasserting itself in the distance. There's talk on the ham radio of organized zones, safe areas, reconstruction. There's also talk about people like Eli, the partial cases, the plateaus, the people stuck in between. No consensus on what they are, no protocol for how to treat them. Some communities accept them, others don't. The word quarantine appears often. The word containment appears sometimes. I will not let my son be contained. Sandra is staying. Not because the divorce is undone, it isn't, but because the thing we share is more important than the thing we didn't survive. We are co-parents in a new sense. Parents of a child who requires two people to maintain the daily practice of treating him as a child. Because it would be easy, terrifyingly easy, to slip into treating him as a patient, a subject, a condition. It takes two of us to resist that gravity. Two of us to remember that the thing eating cereal in the kitchen is our son. However altered, however diminished, however other. He knows what he is. He told us. He told us plainly and with a maturity that no 9-year-old should possess, and that breaks my heart every time I think about it. He lives inside his own uncertainty without the comfort of denial. He feels the weather inside him, and he tells us when it's calm, and he tells us when it's not. Last night, it wasn't calm. He came downstairs at 2 a.m. and stood in our bedroom doorway. Sandra and I sleep in the same room now, in separate beds pushed together, a configuration that reflects our entire relationship. And he said, "It's loud tonight." Sandra opened the covers. He climbed in between us, cool body between warm ones, his slow heartbeat between our fast ones. "We're here," I said. "I know," he said. "Tell me something. From before. Something I did." Sandra told him about the sea lion. I told him about the T-Rex constellation. We talked in the dark until his breathing evened out and his eyes closed, and whatever storm inside him settled back to its holding pattern. We lay there, Sandra and I, our son between us, and we did not sleep. We listened to him breathe, 7 times per minute. Slow, steady, present. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if the plateau holds or if the cliff comes. I don't know if the weather changes. I don't know if one morning the thermometer reads a number that means something final, or if years from now I'm still lying beside this cool, quiet boy who remembers being warm. I only know this: he came home. 3 hours after the world ended, my son walked through the front door with one shoe and said my name. And whatever walked in wearing his face, whatever hybrid of memory and infection and arrested decay he has become, he chose to come home. To me, through all of it, that choice is the measurement that matters. I still have the legal pad. 43 pages of observations, data points, temperatures, behaviors. Evidence of a father trying to science his way through heartbreak. Evidence of a man whose entire professional identity calculation, assessment, risk management failed him completely in the one moment it mattered most. The data didn't save my son. Nothing saved my son. My son may not be saved. My son may be what saving looks like when the world operates on rules it didn't operate on before survival, without wholeness, presence without warmth, love without the body's full participation in its own feeling. But he's here, on the couch right now, reading a book Sandra brought him slowly, 1 page every few minutes, with the careful attention of someone for whom language has become effortful but not impossible. His feet are tucked under a blanket because he knows the sight of them bothers him, even if the cold doesn't. He's adapting. To himself, to what he is. I'm adapting too. I stopped calculating the probability of the worst thing happening. I stopped pricing catastrophe. I sit with my son, and I read beside him, and I exist in the same room. And I let the future be unmodeled. He came home alone. He didn't stay alone. That is the only number that matters.